Hello guys, welcome to our lecture number 3 for GEEC 111 Gender and Society. This third audio tape lecture is entitled Promoting Young People's Reproductive or Sexual Health and Rights. This is retrieved or lifted from Wood and Aggleton, Promoting Young People's Sexual and Reproductive Health Rights from the University of London. All over the world, young people are stigmatized and discriminated against in relation to their sexual or reproductive health. These manifestations are varied and occur in families, communities, health services, places of work, and in schools. Across a range of societies, young people may be stigmatized and discriminated against for being sexually active before marriage or for engaging in forms of sexuality which are considered by their communities as homosexual or transgendered. It may result to unplanned pregnancies, having sexually transmitted diseases, and being HIV positive. Due to the stigmatization of young people who deviate from what is perceived to be natural, they have to conceal their sexual activities from significant adults, including their parents. What is just discussed to students are reproductive biology, education, and information that still neglect discussing real-life situations and choices. Because some of these topics are taboo, and there's a shame and secrecy that stigma brings that can result to young people, limiting their access to what they need, like information about their sexuality and sexual health. So pag-usapan natin ang stigma, discrimination, and human rights na naka-attach sa mga young people's sexual lives. Stigma has been described as a dynamic process of devaluation that significantly discredits an individual in the eyes of others. It could be associated with your skin color, your manner of speaking, your sexual preference, and being sexually active or living with HIV or AIDS. Within particular cultural settings, certain attributes are seized on and defined by others as discreditable or unworthy. So minsan, kung saan tayo nakatira o kung ano yung community na nakapalibot sa atin, sila yung nagde-decide kung anong attributes or characteristics ang considered to be discreditable or unworthy. Stigma is constructed and reinforced in language. I suggest you watch the Netflix series Sex Education, and you will find there that ang daming mga young people na very adventurous sa kanilang sex lives. Discrimination, as defined by UNAIDS in their Protocol for Identification of Discrimination Against People Living with HIV, is any form of arbitrary distinction, exclusion, or restriction affecting a person by virtue of an inherent personal characteristic or perceived belonging to a particular group, despite the absence of justification for these measures. So when stigma is acted upon, it results to discrimination. It consists of actions or omissions that are derived from stigma and directed towards the stigmatized. Stigma and discrimination are interrelated. They reinforce and legitimize each other. Stigma lies at the root of discriminatory actions, leading people to engage in actions or omissions that harm or deny services or entitlements to others. Discrimination can be described as the enactment of stigma. In turn, discrimination encourages and reinforces stigma. The principle of non-discrimination is based on the recognition of the equality of all people and is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other human rights instruments. Inclusion of health status, including HIV or AIDS, in the various factors or instruments. Discrimination is a violation of basic human rights, and these texts prohibit discrimination based on race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, property, birth, or other status. Kung maalala ninyo, meron tayong tinatawag na intersectionality, nag-a-apply din ito sa basic human rights. Most common practices that may be stigmatized in young people are being HIV positive or having a sexually transmitted infection, practicing premarital sex, becoming pregnant outside marriage, engaging in same-sex activity. Kung maalala ninyo sa ating mga klase, madalas kong hindi ko ini-encourage pero nire-raise natin into discussion na pag-usapan natin openly ang sex. #SaySex, no? Huwag tayong matakot na pag-usapan ito kasi dito nagsisimula yung stigma eh. Kung ayaw mong pag-usapan, nagsistigmatize ka. At dahil nagsistigmatize ka, nagdi-discriminate ka na. So as much as possible, let's talk about sex. Thus, a person who is both pregnant and has an STI is likely to be double stigmatized. Different kinds of stigma are often exacerbated by inequalities and power relations in the society. Again, review ng intersectionality, there is no such thing as an homogeneous experience. Young people's experiences differ according to various factors including cultural background, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status. So, nag-i-intersect siya sa lahat ng mga layers ng iyong pagkatao. A pregnant teenage girl from a minority cultural background, for instance, or a young unemployed man having sex with other men in a low-income urban neighborhood are likely to experience stigma and discrimination from a variety of sources. Age as a common denominator. Despite the fact that young people do not form a homogeneous group in relation to the kinds of communities they live in, their age is one factor which they share. In most settings, significant adults such as parents and teachers are expected to have control over the lives of children and young people, including their access to information about sex and sexual and reproductive health. Prejudices on the basis of age. All over the world, young people are often not considered to be mature enough to make decisions about important aspects of their lives, including whether or not to be sexually active, timing of first sex, who they should have sexual relationships with, whether or not they can access and use contraception, and so on. Key adults in children and young people's lives, such as parents and teachers, often seek to convey and reinforce cultural norms around sexuality in the kinds of information they provide and fail to provide to young people. Okay. Napakaraming mga manok dito sa amin. Pagpasensya nyo na yung mga naririnig yung mga manok. Key adults in children's lives often seek to reinforce the powerful normativity of heterosexuality. Yung stigma kasi in relation to sexuality is gendered, kaya expectations of young men and young women differ, with young men being expected to start having sexual relations early and gain sexual experience by having several partners, while young women are pressurized by adults to maintain their virginity until marriage. We need contextual understanding. Due to the problems derived from the various forms of social inequality, the stigma and discrimination associated with young people's sexual and reproductive health need to be considered within their particular cultural and economic settings. So, kailangan tignan natin kung saan konteksto ito. Kung Europe, America, Canada, or Asia, magkakaiba sila ng environment at situations kung saan nag-iiba-iba yung stigma and discrimination na associated sa young people's sexual lives. Effects of stigma and discrimination. Of course, concealment of sexual activity increases their vulnerability to STIs and HIV kasi tinatago na nila yung kanilang sexual activities, mas lalo silang nagiging prone or high risk sa mga sexually transmitted diseases. Visibility and openness about HIV/AIDS are prerequisites for the successful mobilization of government and community resources to respond to this epidemic called HIV. Grabe ang HIV-related stigma and discrimination sa buong mundo, and it undermines prevention efforts by making people afraid to find out whether or not they are infected or even to seek out information about how to reduce their risk. In fact, marinig lang ng mga tao na HIV positive ka, sobra-sobra na yung pagbaba ng pagtingin sa'yo. Important lessons that emerged from the projects and programs reviewed in several countries. Ito yung mga pwede nating i-apply sa ating mga legislative policies sa ating bansa o sa ating mga komunidad kung paano tayo mas magiging proactive sa decision making natin pagdating sa improving young people's sexual and reproductive health. Changing social norms in relation to HIV or AIDS, sexual diversity, and gender is a culturally informed approach to addressing the stigma and discrimination. This approach moves away from a paradigm of individual attitude change towards the goal of creating a social environment with tolerance and respect for young people's sexual and reproductive rights. We have to involve young people in the design, implementation, and evaluation of programs designed for them helps to ensure that their needs are addressed and that programs are appropriate. Dapat may youth participation. Creating spaces in which coalitions of marginalized groups can be developed. Young people must share their experiences and discuss sensitive issues with others who find themselves in similar positions, which can lead to enhanced solidarity among these groups and the development of new forms of peer relatedness. Changing the language of stigma and discrimination by promoting positive rights-based language relating to sexuality and HIV/AIDS is crucial. Given that language is often the vehicle of stigma in the sense that stigma is both constructed and expressed through language. So gawin nating mas positive, mas proactive yung ating approach sa pag-atake ng HIV o ng iba-iba pang mga sexually transmitted issues ng kabataan. Sensitive and participatory research is needed to understand the contexts of stigma and discrimination and understand the sexual cultures of marginalized and stigmatized groups. This is in order to understand their experiences of stigmatization, identify their health needs, and begin to promote tolerance. Horizon study of men who have sex with men in Senegal is a pioneering example of the kind of research which is needed to address stigma and discrimination linked to diverse sexualities in a range of settings. Using innovative methods such as theater, film, painting, and writing can inform young people in an entertaining way and help to tackle sensitive sexuality-related matters in a broad and non-threatening manner. Reorientation of how key adults should respond to the needs and rights of young people and recognition of the diversity of the youth population. So, dapat meron tayong mas adult education kung kailangan natin, no? So that they will be able to respond effectively to the needs and rights of young people when it comes to their sexual and reproductive health. I'm ending my presentation with this law in our country. It's RA 10354 or the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Law of 2012 na controversial bago naging batas. It's a national policy of the Philippines that comprehensively addresses the needs of Filipino citizens when it comes to responsible parenthood and reproductive health. So meron tayong RH law that guarantees the following: access to services on reproductive health and family planning, maternal health care services, reproductive health and sexuality education for the youth, and regular funding for the law's full implementation. So, ginagaranti ng batas na dapat meron tayong reproductive health and sexuality education for the youth. So, hindi masamang pag-usapan ang sex at reproductive health sa mga paaralan. These are the elements of the reproductive health as provided in Section 4 of RA 10354. So I'll just give you the liberty to read this in your free times. Anyway, pwede naman tong i-pause at balik-balikan. So that ends my presentation. I'll see you for my next audio tape lecture, if ever I will see you. Ano ba yun?